Hello and welcome to this episode of Below the Surface. I'm your host, Darshna Kamani, and here is my co-host, Stephanie Cavigliano. Hey, Stephanie.
Thanks, Darshna. Hello. And hello to you all. It's a new year. We've got a new episode of Below the Surface. So how are you feeling, Darshna? Are you ready?
I cannot wait. 100% ready. First show of the year, and we are starting with a bang. Cannot wait to bring on our guest for today.
So 2020 was unique, I think, to put it very nicely.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I feel I must ask you the obligatory question. Did you set any intentions or resolutions as we move into 2021?
Apart from like the usual of staying healthy, keeping fit. One of the ones, well, it was last year's one, and obviously everything got put on hold. So one is to go skydiving. It's definitely a kind of a bucket list thing for me to do. So that's one thing. And then the other is a bit of a competitive one, is between a friend and I. We're seeing who can do the most steps this year. So nothing like a bit of competition to get you exercising for sure.
That's exciting. Well, skydiving, I sure hope you get the opportunity. I mean, you don't really get much more socially distanced than that, right?
Yeah, apart from obviously, I'd have an instructor.
Except for that.
I'm not doing it on my own.
Not yet, anyway.
So that might be something. But yes, fingers crossed. How about you? Any resolutions?
Yeah, so I have a larger goal of sleeping better. So my resolution this year was put down the phone an hour before bedtime, no screens at all. I'm reading myself to sleep, and it's working so far.
It is? Oh, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Dare I ask what you're reading before bed?
Yeah, so right now I'm reading a fiction book. It's called Circe, and it's a novel about ancient Greece. It's quite good.
Oh, nice. Well, that is very good before bed behavior.
Yeah, a little bit of fun.
Yeah, I like it. Right, shall we move on to today's show?
Yes, but before we do that, just a quick reminder for everybody tuning in that you can all ask questions in the comments section below, or feel free, of course, just to say hello and let us know where you're tuning in from. And also, if you missed any of our shows over the last few months, make sure you go check them out on the Barracuda LinkedIn page.
Yeah, there's been some really interesting topics. So moving on to today's show, one thing we learned last year with remote working being the new norm, many organizations moved to the cloud to adapt to this new way of working. And public cloud really provides the scalability and support needed in this new world. So with this in mind, Barracuda went and surveyed IT decision makers in the United States, Germany, France, and the UK to capture current attitudes and opinions around public cloud.
Really interesting topic, especially in the world that we live in today. So with that in mind, I would like to introduce Sinan Eren, our Vice President of Zero Trust Access at Barracuda Networks. Welcome to the show, Sinan.
Hey, Stephanie. Hey, Darshna. Happy belated New Year's. Glad to be on. Always a pleasure.
Happy New Year, Sinan. Really great to have you back on with us. You did the last show of the year and the first show of the year, so hopefully a good start to the year. So before we get started, Sinan, just could you give us a little bit of information about yourself?
Sure, happy to. I'm a 20-year plus veteran of cybersecurity. I've been on all parts of the cybersecurity, I would say, operational theater, whether that's offense, whether that's defense, or in the independent software vendor side of the equation. And coincidentally, this last week, they shut down an important moderated mailing list called BugTrack. So it's been on a good run for 30 years. I found my first job in cybersecurity by sending my first moderated and approved email to BugTrack 20 plus years ago. So, kudos on that for a 30-year run.
Nice work.
That's great. So before we get started, Sinan, Darshna and I were just talking about our New Year's resolutions or intentions or even goals. Did you have one that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, of course, the usual, but maybe I'll say it in this terms. Get on the Peloton more, get on the backlog of all the books, that I've over the last several New Year resolutions, finish the backlog if at all. And I will say finally, perhaps attempt at a modified version of my spouse's, what is it called? Whole30 diet, modified version. But yeah, those are my resolutions.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, let's hope you succeed in them.
Right.
So moving on to today's topic, Barracuda recently published a report looking at the current attitudes and opinions about public cloud. access constraints, security concerns, emerging solutions, and a variety of related topics. Can you give us a real high-level key learnings from this report?
Sure, happy to. So I would say the one that stood out for me, but I'll start with that one. More than 3/4 of organizations that we surveyed are using multi-cloud providers, such as Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, or Google Cloud Platform. That one really stood out. The other one is, it's expected, about more than half, 56% of the respondents are struggling to ensure seamless availability and access, like an always-on access to cloud applications for their organizations, their branches and their branch offices and their sites. And also another interesting one, I would say the number seemed, quite eye-opening, is 70% experience some form of latency and performance challenges around accessing, SaaS workloads such as Office 365. I would say those were the key observations from the survey.
So one of those that you mentioned just now, Sinan, was that 3/4 of the respondents are using multi-cloud providers. Why is that so interesting or shocking, and why do you believe organizations are going the multi-cloud route?
Right. I mean, we always have this, thesis, and you hear it from ISVs like us and analysts and, a bunch of startups out there that are developing multi-cloud solutions about orchestration, about security, about about compliance, governance, right? You hear that because it fits in with the thesis, but to see actually, we're natural skeptics, right? We take everything, that is published by basically, vendors and analysts, perhaps, pitching the book, right? But it's eye-opening to see that our customers are, organizations out there that are going through digital transformation are confirming this, right? It's a brilliant confirmation of the fact that multi-cloud is real, and then a lot of these our customers and organizations are going to the best of breed cloud service provider for the most fitting, most optimized use case they might have in mind.
Okay, so thinking about multi-cloud and security and where the security responsibility lies, and we hear about the shared security model so many times, and it's been discussed in various ways over the years. You've heard about it, but do you really believe that the understanding is there and that's leading to the real action around the responsibility?
I do at this point believe, and it seems like our survey confirms to the tune of 90% plus agrees on the shared responsibility model, that the cloud service providers do, basically are responsible for the security of the infrastructure, and that the customers, the organizations that are leveraging cloud service providers, are in charge of securing what they put on these infrastructures, on these providers, right? So there seems to be a clear understanding. However, when it comes to implementation, of course, it's not that straightforward, right? The complexity builds up very fast. I like to actually, approach this with an analogy. It's like playing the piano compared to playing the violin. You hit a key, it makes a sound. It's very easy to start, right? You can start pressing keys. You can come up with a simple tune in day one. But the complexity from there increases exponentially. It gets very complex very fast, right? So public cloud is a little bit like that, actually. It's easy to set up a couple workloads. It's easy to transform some storage to the public cloud. But when it comes to security, the implementation, the compliance and the governance of your public cloud, the complexity increases fast. Therefore, understanding is one thing, but actually getting it done right in implementation and production is getting super tricky for these organizations.
So if these organizations are struggling to implement security as they're in the public cloud, what advice can you give them to help them on this journey?
Right. I mean, it might sound quite the obvious, but they need to put some guardrails in place, right? Because it's fast transformation. As I said, it's easy to start. It's it's very easy to access and spin up workloads than compared to traditional data center on-prem models, right? So it's very easy to scale the cloud, but at the same time, you need to put some guardrails in place, because when you're hit the throttle going, full speed forward, you might derail, right? So I would suggest putting in these guardrails, leveraging solutions that can, basically provide secure and always-on connectivity across multi-clouds, rather than leveraging perhaps a native solution that might be one way to do it on Azure, another way to do it on AWS, you can put up these guardrails that can span across these walled gardens, right? You can have a control plane, a security solution, a connectivity solution that can bridge multi-cloud, and I think that's the way to go forward, putting good, solid guardrails in place across your cloud deployments.
So you just talked about some of the struggles to implement, but what are the biggest challenges that people are facing, organizations are facing, one when moving to the cloud and then actually staying there?
Right. I mean, it's always been around security, but then we also quickly find out connectivity, always-on connectivity being an important challenge, right? We always had the intuition that securing these new environments is going to be different. The traditional data center or on-prem enterprise network with a DMZ, with a firewall, and at the front end is kind of the ingress to the network. It's been well understood, right? It's been, at least the demarcations are there. It's easy to segment. It's easy to secure. At least that's what we learned over the last 20, 30 years, right? But now if you have these distributed sites, everything being decentralized, there's not a strict notion of a corporate perimeter. Therefore, security obviously become very challenging. But also, having these sites connect to each other, the users, now we're all working from home, still under shelter-in-place lockdown, regimes all over the world. So connecting users, devices, in some cases gadgets, to these cloud service provider, basically backed infrastructure, backed sites, remains to be a challenge. But also, I want to add quickly, is also building in-house expertise, right? There is actually a lot of commonality between cloud service providers. However, also there's a lot of expertise that you need to build specifically for, say, Azure or, say, for AWS. So, being able to implement robust orchestration, put in CI/CD for your infrastructure in place has a steep learning curve. But there are promising developments. Immutable infrastructure, the new paradigm behind GitOps is helping, I would say, transform this space.
So of course there's the migration, which you just talked about, right? The actual moving to the cloud, but then there's the operational phase. So what are some of the constraints these organizations are facing when it comes to cloud access once they're there?
Right. As I touched on, I would say always-on connectivity, right? Connecting, these infrastructure sites. In some cases, they're called availability zones, right? You might have multiple VNets, and you might have multiple VPCs. You might have many of those in multiple cloud environments. So connecting to those things together, having a robust transit between those, having a connective tissue essentially that's always on, robust, and actually improves performance. Has been a challenge once you get up there to make sure you have that in place. But on top of that, of course, you need to connect your users and your devices that might be traveling, that might be working from home, making sure they have good quality of service, have seamless connectivity to these remote sites and branches. Of course, also putting robust security controls around who can access what, given the context. Essentially. Doing this for users and devices is one thing, but also it needs to extend to services and gadgets, right? Those are headless. You cannot, enforce things like two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication. So you have to also securely connect these gadgets into these distributed sites. So that's a challenging task, but that's the direction we're headed. I would say the most encouraging thing that I see in the field is that everything is now being always-on connectivity enabled by identity. And I think that's becoming a very transformational shift in how we think about accessing what or who access what kind of device have access rights into the network. All of these now are being kind of coalesced and reformed around the concept of identity. User identity, device identity, service identity, gadget identity, and the list goes on.
Okay, so, I mean, you've mentioned it already around moving to the cloud is a bit like pressing some of the keys on a piano. It's easy to do, it's relatively quick. So why do so many organizations face a variety of hurdles once they are there?
Right. I mean, increasing complexity, right? It's easy to start off, but then again, it's also easy to expose, your workloads. to, let's say, excess permission issues, right? You can have overly permissive access to your storage environment, to your workloads. You're developing applications at breakneck speed. They might have vulnerabilities. It's easy to ship, always continuous, integration, continuous development. All these concepts make you basically do releases sometimes several times on a daily basis. And that can also expose your, cloud workloads to a lot of weaknesses. But the cloud, providers themselves has known pitfalls. If you're not really on top of, having deep knowledge about the environment you're in, it's easy to due to complexity, kind of expose your network, kind of expose your workloads, in a way that it could lead to data breaches and, breaches and then lateral movement further into the network. I would add again, putting in guardrails is key here.
Yeah, I'd love for you to double click on some of the advice that you would give to organizations facing these connectivity issues. I mean, no doubt, the cloud is allowing for rapid expansion and accessibility, but the security concerns are going to come with it. So what would you suggest to organizations who might be experiencing some of those connectivity challenges?
I would say there are, a great set of SD-WAN offerings. One like the one that Barracuda offers under the CloudGen portfolio. These solutions from various ISVs tackle site-to-site and branch-to-site connectivity challenges. But also we're seeing this transformation in remote access, moving away from legacy VPNs, right? You traditionally had this appliance, whether it's a hardware box or some sort of a FAT VM, a monolithic FAT VM that sits on the edge of the network where you concentrate all your users. We're moving away from that to more of a zero trust network access model, right? So connecting sites through SD-WAN, creating that connective tissue, and then bringing your users and your devices to that connective tissue through zero trust network access. I mean, going forward, I think a recipe, you can refer to as SASE. It's kind of the convergence of all of these solutions together. SD-WAN in one side, ZTNA, zero trust network access on the other side, and of course, in order to give your users always on security on top of always connectivity, you have to pull in the secure web gateway angle, the web threats, protection against web threats, protection against email threats. So all of them converging into what some like to refer to as SASE as a solution forward to solve all these class-specific challenges.
So you just mentioned SD-WAN. So what role do cloud providers play when it comes to SD-WAN solutions?
Right. I mean, I would say native integration with some of these proven, solution providers is critical here. The better, integration with the capabilities and the features of the particular cloud service provider, I think will give the customers the best performance, best quality of service, and the most form of robust security. So I would say, cloud native integration, whichever cloud service provider you might be using, leveraging I think is a critical decision when it comes to choosing an SD-WAN solution.
Really interesting findings. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your thoughts around this, Sinan. I encourage all of our viewers today to go ahead and download this report. You can find it on the Barracuda LinkedIn page. Sinan, any final thoughts before we let you go today?
Right. I mean, I would say overall it's very exciting times. The speed of innovation in public cloud has been terrific, which offers a lot of new opportunities for ISVs and businesses like ours. But at the same time, I would say it's a new and exciting career opportunities for individuals, right? So this digital transformation, shifting from data centers and on-prem legacy, compute environments, compute storage and network environments to cloud service providers, definitely, will bring in a new workforce and I would say transform both organizations, but also the talent pool that we have. I think it's a tremendously exciting time to be in this space.
Thank you so much, Sinan. It's been really a great pleasure having you on and you talking us through the report and the findings, and also how organizations can actually use those findings to help them on their journey when it comes to public cloud. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you both. My pleasure.
All right, everyone. Remember, you can watch all of our LinkedIn Live shows directly from the Barracuda LinkedIn page. And for now, All that's left to say is until next time, have a safe journey.